No matter what we are doing, we want to work at it with all our heart as working unto the Lord, just like Paul instructed us to do in his letter to the Colossians. Now, when it comes to leading worship, we literally are doing it unto the Lord. And while it is certainly true that we should strive to do all things well to the very best of our ability, when it comes to leading worship, there really is an added bar of excellence we should be striving for. Did you realize there is only one thing that we are biblically commanded to do skillfully? When it comes to making disciples, we're just told to do it. When it comes to sharing our faith, we're just told to do it. But when it comes to playing music for the Lord, we are told to do it skillfully. Let's talk about that a little bit more on today's Weekly Worship Thoughts. In his book, Outliers, author Malcolm Gladwell makes a case that it takes roughly 10,000 hours of deliberate practice to truly become a master of something. And that's a lot of hours. According to this idea, if you were to commit yourself to becoming a master of your instrument, it would only take you 5 years to do it if you deliberately practice for 40 hours every single week for 5 years. If you could manage to practice for only 20 hours each week, it would take you 10 years to become a master. Only have 5 hours per week to commit to deliberate practice? Well, in that case, it would take you roughly 40 years to become a master. Yowza. At this point, I have some good news and I have some bad news. The good news is that anyone can become a master of their instrument. The bad news is that, in all likelihood, you will probably never become a master of your instrument. I like to encourage people to practice their instrument for 20 minutes each day. I believe that this is the best strategy for really getting good at your instrument. But with this 20 minutes per day strategy in mind, it would take someone more than 83 years to become a master. At my age, I wouldn't even be halfway there. And that's if I began at birth. The 10,000 hours rule is fascinating research, but I have some really great news for worship team members. You don't have to become a master in order to adequately worship the master. God's rule is substantially easier than the 10,000 hours rule. Sing to him a new song. Play skillfully on the strings with loud shouts. Psalm 33, verse 3. God's rule for worship team members is to play skillfully, and that's it. But what does it actually mean to play skillfully? I think it means a couple of very practical things. Let's consider these ideas together. God deserves your best, not your leftovers. Playing skillfully means putting your heart, soul, mind, and strength into it. Isn't that the kind of worship that God is looking for anyway? So put your heart into it. Don't just go through the motions. Put your soul into it. Aim to truly connect with God as you worship Him through music. Put your mind into it. Really think about what you're playing and or singing. And put your strength into it. Set aside time to physically and adequately prepare. Playing skillfully is all about doing your best. It's not about comparing yourself to someone else's best. It's about comparing yourself to your best. Are you giving God your best, or are you giving Him your leftovers? It is up to the individual church leadership team to decide what skill level is required for being a part of the worship team. 1 Chronicles 25 is a chapter from the Old Testament describing how King David organized the temple musicians. Note that the chapter is completely descriptive, not prescriptive. In other words, that's how he did it, but it doesn't have to be how we do it. He was organizing 288 skilled musicians. Most churches don't even have 288 congregants. Each church leadership team should decide what practical skill level is required for worship team members. Personally, I would require that musicians have a basic understanding of their instrument, play well without being a distraction, and can play along with a metronome. I want them to practice on their own, know their parts prior to rehearsal, continue to grow, and eventually be willing to teach what they know to someone else. But that's just me. The skill level that you or your church require of worship team members may be very different. I would strongly encourage each church to think through what it means for their worship team members to play skillfully. But I don't think I would set that skill level at 10,000 hours. I mentioned earlier that I like to encourage people to practice their instrument for 20 minutes each day. Practically speaking, what should that look like? I'm going to suggest a simple 3-step process that absolutely anyone serious about becoming a more skillful musician could implement. Step 1. Plan a time to practice. If you fail to plan, then you plan to fail. So look at your daily schedule and either carve out or dedicate a 20-minute time slot to each day. Every single one of us has the exact same 24 hours in a day. How you choose to spend those 24 hours really exposes your priorities. If you can't find 20 minutes per day to dedicate to practicing your instrument, then you're way too busy, and a good, healthy pruning is long overdue. Step 2, start with 5 minutes of fun. When it comes to actually practicing your instrument, don't forget that the reason you started playing to begin with was because it was fun. I still remember sitting at an old out-of-tune piano in our living room for hours just banging away at musical nonsense, and it was awesome. Sometimes we can become too serious about growing in skill and end up choking the joy out of our lives. So just start with 5 minutes of nonsensical fun. Play your favorite rock and roll riff. Let your fingers explore new territory of the fretboard. Whatever, just have fun. Step 3, focus for 15 minutes. After you've spent 5 minutes just enjoying your instrument, spend 15 minutes focused on learning a specific song or skill. You could spend this time learning or practicing scales, or you could spend this time committing a specific song's chord progression to memory. Whatever it is, stay focused for 15 solid minutes. Those combined 20 minutes per day will yield a total of 140 minutes per week, or 2 hours and 20 minutes per week. And if you did this every day for a year, you would have logged a combined 7,300 minutes of practice. That's well over 121 hours per year. No, you probably won't ever get to 10,000 hours in your lifetime that way, but you don't need to be a master of your instrument in order to worship the Lord with excellence. You just need to play skillfully. What was one interesting truth or idea that stood out to you today? And how do you think that truth or idea will help you in the future? In your own words, what does it mean to play skillfully on your instrument for the Lord? When it comes to practicing, rehearsing, and leading congregational worship, do you think you tend to give God your best or your leftovers? What makes you feel this way? What practical skills do you think should be the basic requirement for being a part of the church worship team in your context? What do you think about the 3-step process laid out for practicing 20 minutes per day? Do you think that would be a step up from your current approach to growing in skill, or a step down from your current approach?